I wasn't supposed to hear it. It was just a baby monitor. Just a quiet Tuesday night. And my wife was whispering to our 8-month-old son about how they were going to leave me. Not arguing. Not venting. Planning. Calm. Detailed. Certain. I stood in the hallway holding that little black monitor, telling myself I misunderstood. Maybe exhaustion twisted the words. Maybe I caught the middle of a sentence. Then she said, "Daddy won't know until we're already gone." And that wasn't something you miss here. Folks, Uncle Mickle here. I didn't ever picture myself telling this story. Not publicly. Not even to friends, if I'm honest. But some things sit in your chest long enough that they start shaping you. And eventually, you've got to let them breathe. I installed the camera 2 weeks before that night. Not because I thought Scarlett was hiding something. Our son, Michael, had started rolling over in his sleep. He'd wedge himself sideways against the crib rails and scare me half to death. So I bought one of those small Wi-Fi nursery cameras, mounted it high in the corner, white against white, easy to forget. Scarlett didn't object. She barely reacted at all. At the time, I appreciated that. No drama. No debate. Looking back, I don't know. That night I couldn't sleep. My body was tired, but my mind was pacing. You ever get that? Where you're exhausted, but something under your ribs won't settle. So I opened the app on my phone. The nursery glowed soft yellow from the night light. Michael was curled on his side, breathing slow and steady. And Scarlett was in the rocking chair. We'd gotten into the routine of putting him down and leaving the room, letting him self-soothe. She hadn't gone in like that for weeks. But there she was, rocking, back and forth, slow, controlled. She leaned close to the crib and brushed his hair off his forehead. And that's when she started talking. "We just need a little more time," she whispered. "Mommy's got the documents ready." Documents. The word didn't fit in a nursery. "You and I are going somewhere safe," she said softly, "where Daddy can't follow." I felt something cold move through my chest. Not heat, not anger. Cold. I turned the volume up a little. She kept rocking, talking about money she'd moved, about calling her sister in Ohio, about how she waited until he was comfortable again. That was me. There's a strange thing that happens when your life shifts in a single sentence. It doesn't explode like in movies. It narrows. Your hearing sharpens. Your breathing gets careful. I didn't storm in there. I didn't confront her. I just stood in the dark hallway and listened to my wife calmly explain to our baby how she was planning to disappear with him. And here's the part that still unsettles me. There was no hatred in her voice. No bitterness. Just certainty. That hurt worse than yelling would have. I lowered the monitor volume because I was afraid she'd hear me breathing through the door. That's how quiet the house was. That's how thin everything felt. I remember thinking, how long has this been happening? Because plans like that don't start in a single afternoon. They grow. They organize themselves. And I had missed it. Or maybe I chose not to see it. I didn't sleep after that. I stood in that hallway until the rocking stopped. And when she said one last thing, almost like a promise, "Daddy won't understand, but this is for the best." That's when I realized something had shifted in our marriage long before that night. And I had one decision to make. Walk into that nursery and blow everything open. Or stay quiet and find out how deep this really went. Before all of that, we were steady. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Just steady. Scarlett and I had been married 9 years. We met at a 4th of July cookout at a friend's place. She was wearing this simple blue dress. Nothing extravagant. But she had this way of listening when you spoke. Like what you said mattered. That's what drew me in. She had a calm about her. Organized. Thoughtful. The kind of woman who planned Christmas shopping in October. I was more practical. Work hard. Pay bills. Fix what breaks. It balanced out. We started small. 1-bedroom apartment with neighbors who argued through the walls. Then a modest house outside Columbus. Quiet street. Maple tree in the yard. The kind of place where you imagine raising a kid. When Michael was born, I thought it sealed us together in a way nothing else could. Those first months were brutal, though. No sleep. Constant crying. Scarlett would sit on the edge of the bed some nights, just staring at the wall, while Michael fussed in the bassinet. I'd ask, "You okay?" She'd say, "Just tired." And I believed her. Because I was tired too. She wasn't dramatic about postpartum things. No big breakdowns. No screaming fights. Just quieter. She stopped reaching for my hand automatically. Stopped leaning into me on the couch. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Adjustment. Life shifting. And if I'm being honest, I retreated too. Work became my anchor. Overtime meant security. Security meant stability. Stability meant love. At least that's how I framed it in my head. Maybe that was easier than sitting in the quiet with her. Scarlett's sister, Lisa, started calling more around that time. Long conversations. Private ones. I'd walk into the room and the tone would change. Not suspicious exactly. Just guarded. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But I didn't want to be the jealous husband monitoring phone calls. So I told myself she needed support. A new mom leaning on her sister. That's normal. There was one moment, though. About a month before the camera. We were folding laundry in the living room. Michael was asleep upstairs. Out of nowhere, she asked, "If you ever felt trapped, would you tell me?" It caught me off guard. Trapped how? I asked. Just in life, she said. If you needed out. I remember laughing lightly. I'd fix whatever's broken before I ran. She nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't smile either. Just nodded. At the time, I thought it was one of those late-night philosophical questions. The kind couples ask when they're tired. Now, it feels like she was testing the idea. There were still good days. We took Michael to the park. Sat on a blanket while he tried to shove grass in his mouth. Scarlett laughed then, a real laugh. Head tilted back. The kind that made strangers smile. We cooked dinner together some nights. She'd hum under her breath while chopping vegetables. I'd come up behind her and kiss her neck. Sometimes she leaned into it. Sometimes she stiffened. You tell yourself that's just marriage settling into routine. Not every distance is disaster. The week I installed the camera, she thanked me. It'll help me sleep, she said. Her voice sounded normal. That's what messes with you later. Because when things collapse, you expect big warning signs. Shouting, threats, slammed doors. But our life didn't look like that. It looked ordinary. She started organizing paperwork more often. Old folders came out of the filing cabinet. Birth certificates. Insurance forms. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "We should have everything in one place. Just being responsible." Responsible is hard to argue with. I didn't see red flags. I saw adulthood. And maybe that's on me. Because comfort can turn into blindness if you're not careful. Looking back, there was a subtle shift in her eyes sometimes. Like she was somewhere else. Already imagining something different. But she still made dinner. Still kissed Michael goodnight. Still told me she loved me. And I believed her. That's the part one wrestle with. Was she lying then? Or did something change later? Standing in that hallway the night I heard her whisper. All those small memories started rearranging themselves. Like puzzle pieces flipping over. I wasn't living in chaos. I was living in quiet drift. And drift is dangerous because you don't feel it happening. You just wake up one day and realize you're nowhere near where you thought you were. I'm curious, have you ever felt that in your own life? Where everything looked fine on the outside, but something underneath had already started shifting. I didn't think my marriage was fragile. I thought it was tired. There's a difference. Or at least, I thought there was. And that misunderstanding is what made the whisper in the nursery feel like it came out of nowhere. But the truth? It had probably been building for months. I just didn't know what shape it was taking yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. Scarlett eventually stopped talking. The rocking slowed. The chair creaked one last time. Then silence. A minute later, the nursery door opened. Her footsteps moved down the hallway. I pressed myself against the wall like I didn't belong in my own house. She passed right by me. Didn't see me in the dark. Went into our bedroom. Closed the door. I stood there another full minute before walking into the nursery. Michael was asleep. One tiny hand curled near his face, completely unaware of the plans being made around him. I looked at that rocking chair. Tried to line up the image of my wife, sitting there with the words I'd just heard. It didn't match. That's what made it worse. I went back downstairs and opened the camera app again. Scrolled backward. That's when my stomach dropped. It hadn't started that night. She'd been doing it for days. Short whispers at first. Almost harmless. Mommy's figuring things out. You and me, buddy. But then it grew clearer. I moved some money today. I talked to Aunt Lisa. We just have to wait until the timing's right. The timing. I felt something shift inside me then. Not panic. Not rage. Awareness. This wasn't emotional venting. This was preparation. I went to bed around 3 in the morning. Lay beside her. She was turned away from me, breathing evenly, or pretending to. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I know some of you would have. Maybe you should have. But I needed to understand what I was dealing with. So I acted normal. Made coffee. Kissed her forehead. She smiled back like nothing had changed. That smile. I could still see it. Over the next few days, I watched. Really watched. Scarlett started taking longer walks with Michael. Said fresh air helped him nap. She'd take the large diaper bag. The one with too many pockets. On Wednesday, while she was in the shower, I checked it. I'm not proud of that. But pride wasn't the priority anymore. Tucked beneath wipes and spare onesies was a small envelope. Cash. Thick. Not grocery store cash. Careful cash. My chest tightened. That afternoon, I checked our joint bank account. A few transfers had been made over the past couple months. Small amounts. Spread out. Moved into a savings account I didn't recognize. Smart amounts. Enough to build something. Not enough to alert me immediately. My first thought wasn't anger. It was calculation. How far could she get on that? I hated that my brain went there. That night I listened to the nursery feed again. She went in after I pretended to fall asleep. Same chair. Same soft voice. We're almost ready, she whispered. Mommy has the tickets. Tickets. That word changed everything. Tickets meant date. Date meant commitment. This wasn't vague anymore. I felt this pressure building under my ribs. Not explosive. Just steady. I decided to test something. The next evening, while we were cleaning up dinner, I said casually, "You ever think about visiting Lisa for a while? Change of scenery." She froze. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. "Maybe," she said. "Someday. Someday." Her eyes didn't meet mine. That was the first visible crack. And here's where the real dilemma began. If I confronted her, without all the information, she could speed things up. If I stayed quiet too long, she might leave without warning. Every move mattered. Every word. I started screen recording the nursery feed when she talked. Not because I wanted to use it against her in some ugly courtroom scene, but because if she left with my son, I needed proof that this wasn't sudden, that it was planned. Marriage shouldn't feel like gathering evidence. But there I was. By Friday, I knew two things for certain. She was leaving, and she thought I didn't know. What I didn't know yet was when, or why she believed she had to escape. That question kept circling in my head. Escape implies danger. Was I the danger? I replayed every argument we'd ever had. There weren't many. I've never raised a hand to her. Never threatened. Never cheated. But 3 months earlier, I had lost my temper once. Work was brutal. Michael had been crying nonstop. Scarlett asked me to take him while she showered. I snapped. Not at her. At the situation. I slammed a cabinet door too hard and said, "I can't do this right now." It lasted 10 seconds. I apologized immediately. Held her. Held the baby. We moved on. Or at least I thought we did. Was that the moment she started planning? Did that small flash grow in her memory until it looked like something bigger? Or was I grasping for logic in something that didn't have any? Friday night, I sat in my truck in the driveway after work. Engine off. Just sitting there. Thinking, do I confront her tonight? Do I wait? If I wait, am I giving her space to disappear? If I confront, am I pushing her out the door faster? You ever sit with a decision that feels like it split your life in two? That was me. And I decided. One more day. I needed confirmation. Solid ground. Because if I was going to act, it had to be the right move. And I didn't yet know what that move was. The confirmation came quietly. Not through the camera. Not through whispers. Through her email. Thursday afternoon, Scarlett took Michael out again. Said she needed more formula. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving. Soft. Familiar. I waited until her car turned the corner. Then I opened her laptop. I sat there for a full minute before touching anything. My reflection stared back at me in the dark screen. I didn't recognize the man looking back. Not angry. Not frantic. Just bracing. Her email was already logged in. The first thing I saw was a confirmation from a bus company. 2 one-way tickets. Columbus to Dayton, Ohio. Departure Monday. 9:15 a.m. Passenger names. Scarlett Carter. Michael Carter. Not mine. I read it twice. Then a third time. Just to make sure my brain wasn't twisting letters. There was another email thread below it. An apartment inquiry. Single parent with infant seeking safe, quiet space. Single parent. That phrase didn't feel accidental. It felt chosen. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. 3 months of preparation. 3 months of smiling across the dinner table. 3 months of folding laundry beside me. I checked the bank account again that night. The savings account was opened exactly 91 days earlier. Small transfers. Every week. Organized. Intentional. This wasn't emotional. This was strategic. And that's when something inside me shifted. Not anger. Clarity. She wasn't considering leaving. She had decided. That evening, I tried one more time. Scarlett, I said while she washed bottles at the sink. Are you happy? She didn't answer immediately. Water ran. Steam rose. Finally she said, I'm fine. Fine. That word is a shield. That's not what I asked, I said. She turned off the faucet slowly, dried her hands, and then she said something that knocked the air out of me. I don't feel safe here anymore. Safe. The word hit harder than anything else. Safe from what? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Her eyes didn't show fear. They showed conviction. From the way you look at me sometimes, she said. That confused me more than anything. How do I look at you? She shook her head. You don't see it. I searched her face for something concrete. An example. A moment. A story. Nothing. Just distance. And that's when I realized something dangerous. She had built a narrative. One where I was a threat. Even if I didn't recognize the version of myself she was describing. Later that night, I reviewed the nursery footage again. Not for evidence. For understanding. She kept saying things like, Mommy just needs to protect you. I waited until Daddy felt better. That line again. Until Daddy felt better. 3 months ago, I'd had that 10-second outburst. Slamming a cabinet. Saying I couldn't handle the noise. 10 seconds. I apologized immediately. Held her. Held Michael. I thought it was resolved. But maybe in her mind, it wasn't 10 seconds. Maybe it became a pattern. Maybe exhaustion magnified it. Or maybe I'm still trying to make logic out of something that had already moved beyond logic. Sunday night arrived. The night before the bus tickets. Scarlett didn't hide the suitcase. She packed it in our bedroom. Calm. Methodical. Tiny socks folded carefully. Bottles wrapped in cloth. I stood in the doorway watching her. She didn't look guilty. She looked determined. That might have been the lowest point, because I realized she wasn't running from me in anger. She believed she was protecting our son. And if someone believes they're protecting a child, reasoning doesn't always reach them. I went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table. No television. No lights except the one above the stove. I imagined waking up Monday morning to an empty crib. An empty house. No baby monitor humming. No soft breathing down the hall. Just silence. That kind of silence changes a man. I wasn't fighting to save a marriage anymore. I was fighting to remain a father. And I had less than 12 hours to decide what I was going to do about it. I didn't sleep Sunday night. Not because I was panicking. Because I was planning. There's a difference. Panic is loud. It rushes you. Makes you sloppy. Planning is quiet. Cold almost. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad. Haven't used one of those in years. Yellow paper. Blue lines. Felt strange writing my own life out like a checklist. 9:15 a.m. Bus departure. That meant she'd leave the house around 8:30, which meant I had one window. I wrote down what I knew. She had cash. She had tickets. She had a place lined up in Dayton. And she believed she was protecting Michael. That last part mattered, because if I confronted her aggressively, I'd confirm whatever story she'd built in her head about me being unstable. So anger was off the table. Emotion was off the table. This had to be controlled. I went upstairs around midnight. She was asleep. Or pretending. The suitcase was by the closet. Zipped. Ready. I stood there looking at it longer than I care to admit. 9 years of marriage reduced to 20 pounds of fabric and folded clothes. I could have taken the suitcase, hidden it, destroyed the tickets, but that wouldn't solve anything. That would just escalate it. And if this went legal, and I knew it might, I needed to be the steady one. So I went back downstairs, opened my laptop. I emailed myself copies of the bus confirmation and the rental inquiry, screenshots of the bank transfers, the nursery recordings, not to weaponize, to protect. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in months, David. Old friend, lawyer now. I didn't give him every detail, just enough. If my wife leaves the state with our son without telling me, what are my options? There was a pause on the other end. That depends, he said. Are you on the birth certificate? Yes. Then she can't just disappear. But if she leaves before anything's filed, it gets complicated. Complicated. I thanked him, hung up, and that's when something clicked. I didn't need to stop her from leaving. I needed to control the moment. So I set an alarm for 6 a.m. Monday. When it went off, I got up quietly, made coffee, started breakfast like any other day. Scarlett came downstairs around 7:15, dressed, hair pulled back, not in pajamas. She was ready. She looked at me, surprised to see me up so early. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep, I replied. We sat at the table across from each other. The suitcase was still upstairs, the diaper bag by the door, Michael in his high chair, smearing banana across the tray like none of this existed. I looked at him, then at her, and I spoke calmly. I know about the tickets. No accusation, no raised voice, just the truth laid flat between us. Her face went pale, not from guilt, from being seen. You went through my email, she asked. Yes. Silence stretched. I heard you in the nursery, I added. That landed harder. She swallowed. You weren't supposed to. That sentence told me everything. Not, it's not what you think. Not, I can explain. Just, you weren't supposed to hear it. I nodded slowly. You think I'm dangerous, I said. She didn't respond, but she didn't deny it either. That hurt more than I expected. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not going to yell, I said. I'm not going to block the door. But if you walk out with him today, without talking this through legally, you're turning this into something bigger than it needs to be. She looked at me carefully, like she was reassessing a risk, and I realized something important in that moment. She wasn't afraid of me physically. She was afraid of instability, of unpredictability. That 10-second outburst months ago had grown into something symbolic in her mind. Maybe postpartum anxiety twisted it. Maybe exhaustion fed it. I don't know. But I wasn't going to fight fear with force. I'm willing to do counseling, I said quietly. Parenting classes, anger management, if that's what you need to feel secure. But you don't get to erase me from his life without a conversation. Her eyes filled with something then. Not tears exactly. Conflict. The room felt suspended. This was the moment. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just two adults sitting across from each other with a baby between them. I didn't threaten her. Didn't beg. I just held eye contact. Steady. Because whatever happened next, I needed her to see I wasn't the monster she'd quietly created. And I needed to be certain of who I was in that chair. Even if she chose to walk out anyway. She stood up first. Not fast. Just deliberate. I'm not trying to erase you, Scarlett said. Her voice wasn't shaking. I'm trying to make sure he grows up somewhere calm. Calm. Like this house was a storm. Michael dropped his spoon. It clattered against the tray. Neither of us looked down. You think I can't give him that? I asked. She didn't answer. That silence was loud. I waited, she said finally. I kept watching, hoping it was just stress. But I can't gamble with him. Gamble. Like I was a risk. Something inside me tightened, but I kept my voice even. You're leaving in 2 hours, I said. You rented an apartment. You moved money. You rehearsed it in the nursery. Her jaw clenched. I needed to be sure. I stood up slowly, not to tower, just to meet her eye to eye. If you walk out that door today without a custody agreement, without a conversation mediated properly, you're forcing this into a legal fight. She blinked. I don't want to fight, she said. Neither do I. Silence again. Then she said something that cut deeper than anything else. You scared me that night. There it was. The cabinet slam. The 10 seconds. I let out a breath. I scared myself that night. I admitted. That was the truth. I've never seen you lose control like that. She continued. And if you can lose it once. Her sentence trailed off. If I can lose it once, I can lose it again. I finished. She didn't nod. Didn't have to. Michael started fussing. Scarlett instinctively moved toward him. And that's when the moment shifted. Because I realized something. If she picked him up and walked upstairs to grab that suitcase, this conversation was over. Not emotionally. Physically. So I stepped gently in front of the staircase. Not blocking her aggressively. Just present. You're not taking him out of this house today. I said quietly. Her eyes widened. Are you threatening me? There it was. The line. I felt it. One wrong tone, and everything she feared would solidify. So I lowered my voice even more. No, I said. I'm drawing a boundary. She stared at me like she was recalculating. And for a second, just a second, I questioned myself. Was I proving her right by standing there? Was this control? Or protection? That doubt hit hard. Because I never wanted to be the man who trapped someone. But I also wasn't going to stand aside while my son disappeared. Let's call David, I said. Right now. Put it on speaker. We'll ask him what the next step should be. She hesitated. Her hand rested on Michael's high chair. The suitcase upstairs felt like a ticking clock. You'd really take this to court? She asked. If I have to. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. I'm not unstable, Scarlett. I'm tired. I'm human. And yeah, I lost my temper once. That doesn't make me unsafe. She searched my face, looking for something. Anger, volatility, anything. All she saw was control. Intentional control. I don't hate you, she said softly. I know. That was the strange part. This wasn't hate. It was fear. Fear had been building quietly in her mind for months. And now we were standing inside it. Michael started crying. Real crying now. Scarlett picked him up, held him close. And I felt that old instinct rise in me. To grab him too. To hold on. But I didn't. I let her soothe him. Because the last thing I needed was a tug-of-war. I'll cancel the bus, she said finally. Not loudly. Not defeated. Just tired. I won't leave today. Today. That word mattered. Then we call a counselor, I said. Today. She nodded once. Slow. The tension in the room shifted. Not gone. Just redirected. I stepped away from the staircase. She didn't move toward it. And that was the climax. Not shouting. Not police. Not dramatic music. Just a line drawn quietly in a kitchen at 8:02 in the morning. I didn't win. She didn't lose. We just paused the collapse. But I knew something as I stood there watching her rock our son again. Even if she stayed. Even if we tried. Things would never feel the same. Because once someone plans an escape, you can't unhear it. She canceled the bus tickets at 8:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the microwave clock while she sat at the table on hold with the bus company. There was no drama in it. Just elevator music. Michael chewing on a teething ring. Scarlett saying, "Yes, I'd like to cancel both reservations." Both. Hearing her say it out loud did something to me. Made it real in a different way. When she hung up, we didn't hug. Didn't cry. We just sat there. Two tired adults who almost split their child's life into before and after. We called a counselor that afternoon. Earliest appointment was Wednesday. Those 2 days in between felt longer than the entire 9 years of our marriage. We moved carefully around each other. Polite. Measured. Like roommates who just discovered a leak in the foundation and weren't sure how bad it was. The suitcase stayed upstairs. Unpacked. But not put away. That detail matters. Because even though she didn't leave, she hadn't fully arrived back either. Wednesday came. We sat on a gray couch in a small office that smelled faintly like lavender and printer paper. The counselor, middle-aged woman named Karen, asked us simple questions. How long have you been feeling unsafe? Scarlett answered first. 3 months. 3 months. Right after the cabinet slam. Karen looked at me. Have there been other incidents? No, I said. Scarlett hesitated. No, she admitted. Karen leaned forward slightly. What changed after that moment? Scarlett's voice got quieter. I started imagining what could happen if it got worse. Imagining. That word told me everything. Nothing had escalated, but in her mind it had. She described how tired she'd been, how anxious, how every loud noise felt amplified, how she started watching my moods more closely, waiting for another crack. And because she was waiting, she began to see patterns that weren't there. I'm not saying she invented fear. Postpartum anxiety is real. Exhaustion is real. Vulnerability is real. But fear without communication becomes a story. And she'd been living inside hers alone. Karen asked me how I felt hearing all that. I paused, because the honest answer wasn't simple. I feel misunderstood, I said finally. But I also feel like I should have noticed how scared she was. That was true. I'd been focused on providing, on keeping everything stable, but I hadn't been checking her internal weather. And storms don't need visible clouds to build. We agreed to weekly sessions. I started individual counseling too. Not because I believed I was dangerous, but because I wanted tools. Better ways to release pressure. Better ways to show calm. Not just assume it was obvious. Scarlett began seeing a doctor about postpartum anxiety. There was relief in naming it. But relief doesn't erase damage. Trust shifts. It doesn't snap back. For a while, every time she picked up her phone, I wondered who she was texting. Every time I raised my voice, even just laughing too loud, I saw her flinch. That does something to you. It makes you hyper-aware of your own existence in your home. Months passed. Slowly, the suitcase eventually went back into the closet. The savings account stayed open, but transparent. We made new agreements. No secret accounts. No private escape plans. If one of us feels fear, we say it out loud immediately, even if it sounds irrational. Especially if it sounds irrational. Did everything return to how it was before? No, it couldn't, because I had heard her plan a life without me, and she had lived for months believing she might need to flee. That kind of fracture leaves a line. But here's what changed in me most. I stopped assuming stability meant silence. I started asking harder questions. How are you really feeling? Are you holding something in? Not once. Regularly. Because drift is quiet. And I refuse to ignore quiet anymore. Michael is 3 now. He runs through the house, laughing like nothing ever almost happened. And sometimes I watch him and think about that Monday morning. How close we were to a different version of our lives. It wasn't a villain story. It wasn't betrayal in the dramatic sense. It was fear left alone too long. And that kind of fear almost cost us everything. It's strange how life can split on something that lasts 10 seconds. Not an affair. Not violence. Not some headline-worthy disaster, just a slammed cabinet, an exhausted man saying, I can't do this right now. And an exhausted woman hearing something much bigger than what was said. If I've learned anything from that season, it's this. Silence is dangerous in ways shouting never is. When people shout, at least you know where the cracks are. When they go quiet, they start building escape routes in their heads. Scarlett wasn't my enemy. She was scared. And I wasn't a villain. I was overwhelmed. But neither of us said those words clearly enough. So fear filled in the blanks. I've replayed that cabinet moment more times than I can count. Not because I think I was abusive, but because I underestimated how heavy small actions can feel to someone who's already carrying too much. Postpartum anxiety doesn't announce itself with a sign. It whispers. It watches. It waits. And if you don't drag it into the light, it writes stories for you. There's something humbling about realizing your spouse believed they needed to escape you. It forces you to look at yourself without ego. Not to accept blame that isn't yours, but to examine impact. Impact matters more than intent sometimes. I intended to express frustration. She experienced instability. That gap, that's where everything almost broke. We're not perfect now. We still argue about small things. I still get tired. She still gets anxious sometimes. But we don't let silence grow roots anymore. If she feels unsafe, even emotionally unsafe, she says it immediately. If I feel overwhelmed, I say it before it explodes. No more guessing. No more rehearsing conversations in a nursery to a baby who can't respond. I think about that a lot. Her whispering escape plans to our son. He couldn't understand her words, but I could. And maybe that was the wake-up call I needed too. Not to defend myself, but to pay attention better. Marriage isn't just about loyalty. It's about visibility. Can the other person see your fear? Can you see theirs? Or are you both performing calm while drifting further apart? I'll ask you something honest. If someone you love started quietly planning an exit, would you know before it was too late? Or would you only find out when the suitcase is already by the door? That question still sits with me, because stability isn't something you declare. It's something you practice daily. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. Unspoken fear will always grow louder than spoken truth.